Welcome to Revolution Against Evolution. I'm your host, Doug Sharp.
We co-host Rich Gear here with you as well, and we're going to continue the thing we started last time with really some of the about supposed bad designs in animals. What do we want to title the show, Doug? Again, poor design.
Well, this is about the left recurrent laryngeal nerve. And it's an argument of poor design that Richard Dawkins
uses a lot.
And
and other evolutionists as well.
Evolutionists like this because they think this is real big evidence for poor design and evidence for evolution.
So before we get going, you want to explain what the laryngeal nerve really is? What is it?
Well, you actually have two nerves that service the larynx. The larynx, the voice box.
Voice box, okay.
And the one comes pretty much straight from the brain, and it branches off. But there's another nerve. It's called the vagus nerve, and it goes all the way down the spine to where the aorta is. It turns around and comes back up, and it services some of these other organs going up, and also lastly the larynx on the other end. And so this has been used by, I think this is what actually tripped up Richard Dawkins.
Okay.
It was something that his professor pointed this out to him. This is something that to him really proved evolution. And so,
okay, this is what got Dawkins going on the evolutionary path, was this particular argument?
One of the things.
Okay.
And so there, I think that we need to actually deal with this in the way that Dr. Jerry Bergman has done it in his Poor Design book. It's an invalid argument, and the claim is that evolution is proved because of this poor, or at least puzzling design can be accumulated needlessly.
Why do we have one wrapping around? Why one so long and the other one's direct? Right.
Okay. And I remember about 5 to 10 years ago, something like that. I was answering an email about this. There was a fellow, and he was talking about the giraffe. The giraffe also has this feature, and basically he claimed that this left recurrent laryngeal nerve.
And this one's really long, right?
He claims it's 15 feet too long, and here's the thing of it is, though, if you're going to design a house and you're going to wire the house, and let's say you wanted to go from that end of the house for the wire and take the shortest route over to this other outlet over here,
sure.
Would you string that wire all the way across this room and then plug it in over there? No, you'd take the circuitous
route around there so it doesn't interfere with anything, right?
That's right, and so there's a reason why this nerve is the way it is.
Even though we know, is it ohm resistance or something? I'm maybe talking out of my head, but the longer the electricity has to travel, it is a little less efficient. Right. But we do it for aesthetic reasons. And also for practical reasons, you don't trip it over wires and things like that. Is that similar reasons? Maybe is something to talk about why the one nerve may be longer. In other words, the argument you gave the guy, didn't you say, why don't you just do a surgical procedure on him?
Right, and that's the challenge I would have to Mr. Dawkins, and I gave to this fellow in this email. He says, state what you expect that might be effect if you were to shorten the length of this nerve, and then surgically do it so that you now have it working the way you think it might work properly. And of course he came up with, he said, I think you got me here.
Oh, the guy you're talking to?
Yeah, the guy I was talking to. And really that's the whole thing, is that you need to explain to us what kind of effect you might end up getting if it was indeed a poor design and you can actually improve upon it. That means that you have a better design in mind, and you're a better engineer than God.
Yeah. Well, which they don't believe in.
Right.
Now, Doug, the thing about it is their argument based on the fact that they can't see a reason for it being long,
Right.
as opposed to the other one being a normal? The right one is like a normal, a directory, and the left one is the one that's the circuitous route, right?
Right.
And is it they can't find good reasons for it, or have reasons come up in recent years, or did they always know that it actually does? Like you seem to allude to it earlier, that the longer one seems to service other organs on its route. You know, there's reasons.
Right. This is really a poor argument, because the longer nerve actually is the vagus nerve, and that's an important nerve that services a lot of different organs within the body.
Okay.
And it comes down this area, and all these other organs that come off of it are serviced by that particular nerve, and then the branch of it comes back up, and it works as a result of there's
being long like that.
Being long like that. There's but
So you can't say they don't have the vaguest idea why it works.
the vagus, right?
Okay, I had to throw that in there just for the fun of it.
Yeah.
Or just for the pun of it.
And then the left laryngeal nerve works in perfect coordination with the right one, which takes a more direct route. And there's
That's interesting.
There's a discussion of the anatomy on page 122 of this book. Let me take a look at it. The lingual nerve, which is the short one, it services the general sensation of the anterior 2/3 of the tongue, the sublingual mucosa, which is the mucus glands, the mandibular lingual gingiva, which is a part of the teeth,
Oh yeah.
and the mouth floor. And then two lingual nerves connect to the larynx, the right nerve looping around under the subclavian artery and then traveling upwards, and the left loops around the left side of the aortic arch.
Now that's the short one or the long one?
Well, I was talking about both of them, right?
Oh, okay, all right, okay.
Oh, the same
Both
side,
the same one branches
right.
to the right, one to the left, okay.
So they're not symmetrical. And the larynx, commonly called the voice box, is located at the top of the neck and produces sound, protects the trachea against food aspiration. It also houses the vocal folds, manipulates pitch and volume, which is essential for phonation. Larynx serves numerous functions besides phonation, including respiration, airway protection, and coordination of swallowing. Several nerves in the larynx controls these many major tasks. Now, sometimes they'll get into why did God have two different pipes, one for breathing and one for eating, right in the same mouth?
If you ever go down the wrong pipe, you'll know why it's good to have two.
But there's really very good reasons for it doesn't avoid the direct route. It descends to the chest, loops around the aorta, and returns to the larynx. But it's not the laryngeal nerve that loops around the aorta, it's the vagus nerve.
The long one.
Yeah, and the vagus nerve is a main nerve. In adults, rather than taking the direct route from the vagus nerve to the larynx and the neck area, the left vagus nerve travels down and it services other organs on the way. And here's the thing about it. You have a nerve, a control center. You have your brain, your control center that's sending signals to all these different organs, telling them what to do. And each one of them has a signal that is specific for that particular organ, and yet you have all these different things going on all the way.
So Doug, you're saying, this reminds you of a lot of things, Doug, although in this particular case, they know the functions of it. So many times I have found evolutionists stick their foot in it. They'll make a pronouncement, this doesn't work, or this is inefficient,
Right.
or this is bad design, or this is things like junk DNA, the vestigial organs, whatever it is, and then they suddenly find out, no, this is the best way for it to work. This is really the only way it could work efficiently. Yet they never take it back, Doug, or they kind of pretend they've never said those things,
Right.
and they just conveniently forget about that. You
Well,
know,
this
and
becomes
this reminds me of that.
a meme, a sound bite that the evolutionists use to
Yeah.
say, well, we have a God who actually was very inefficient in the way he
Right.
put things together. But if you look at it and understand all the different dynamic of things that are going on in the voice
Yeah,
box,
there's a lot, yeah.
there's a lot of things going on in terms of speech and things like that. And I told the guy about the giraffe, perhaps if you surgically shorten this nerve in the giraffe, perhaps the giraffe can sing.
Oh, yeah, you're being a little facetious, but the thing is, it's easy to use sound bites. We're accused of doing that, and I don't know whether we really do it or not. Yeah, I guess there's some, we have little memes we've used over the years, from you, from me, from you to you, I can't remember, go to you via the zoo,
Right.
Those kinds of things. And those do get a little bit glib. I mean, they say basically the idea of what we believe evolutionists are teaching, and in essence, that is sort of what they're teaching. But it doesn't really explain it. It's not really helpful a lot. But I think evolutionists do it far too often. They use these, God is a bad designer, or God is an inefficient designer, or whatever, or he's a cruel design, whatever that they use. And then when you point things out, like the least the guy was honest enough to say, "Oh, you got me."
Yeah.
But people like Dawkins don't say anything. They just get mad at you.
Yeah, right, yeah.
When you catch them and things like that. Like the time when they talked about when he was caught on camera, couldn't give an answer to the best evidence for an increase in genetic information at the genomic level.
Right.
He couldn't give an answer because there is no good answer, and that's what evolution requires. We see that a lot in this kind of stuff, and they just go on to the next thing, and you answer this question, they'll do the floodgate of they'll throw 3 or 4 other things. So you answer those, and they give you 10 other things. They're but all they're doing is just really trying to escape say, look, we're trying to escape the obvious conclusion there is a designer, number one. And number two, no matter what you answer, it's a matter of the heart, not a matter of the mind.
That's
it's not
right,
a matter
yeah.
that we don't have good answers. It's a matter that their heart is desperately deceived, and they don't want to believe. And it's very, very, it's very hard, because especially when you care about people, as Christians do, as people who believe in the God of the Bible do, they care. We want you to come to a loving and the true God, and we want you to come to a saving faith so that we can see you forever. And for that, we're castigated and called liars or deceivers or just ignorant, or all of the above, okay? And yet we can answer these things very, very times. But that aside, Doug, this is not to say for the audience that we have answers to everything all the time, but it's amazing, Doug, so many of the things we do have answers for. What really impresses me, Doug, or I guess maybe depresses me, is how people use arguments that have been discounted for 50 years or 20 years, or many, many years. They just pretend that there's that these things are still true. We've talked many, many times vestigial organs, and Jerry's written several books on that. The idea of the doctoring of the embryonic stuff, and it's amazing, Doug, how the arguments continue to go on. For instance, Doug, this has been a little bit off track a little bit, but the idea, the abortion argument, for one, got traction because back in the day they told you that you weren't fully a human being back in the early stages. You were going through the fish stage or the amphibian stage or whatever. And now they don't use that blatantly like they did back in the day.
But Dawkins uses that. That's what
still.
he's
I thought they kind of abandoned that because the reality is
he says that this particular nerve is left over from that fish stage development.
Oh my goodness! This is as bad. This is as bad as the old Lamarckian arguments, I mean, they've been discounted and discredited for many, many years, and they're good answers. Creationists have good answers to these things.
And the embryology argument is actually a creationist talking point, because the design of this nerve is necessary in the development dynamics of the fetus.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
and so it's not to be, and this is an embryologist, Eric Blechschmidt. He says this is not to be interpreted as historic carryovers of evolution, because it's so totally different as it goes in the embryo. So he's not arguing that this is
an evolutionary leftover.
Right, it is not.
Or a vestige from the past. But I tell you, Doug, with, like I say, abortion coming to the forefront in the political scene again, it's amazing. I still hear them say, well, you're not fully a human yet. They still use it. I can't, and yet it's so unarguably false, and that they still use it, Doug. But they oftentimes, right here, Dawkins actually tells you this. But it's an amazing thing to be done, that people that hold on to arguments that really are invalid, even though, but it's effective. It's an effective soundbite, Doug, to get people to carry.
If you take the abortion argument, there was recently born a little girl, and she was about 9 ounces at birth, and
9 ounces.
9 ounces at birth, and she survived the birth, and is now viable.
Wow. So she's still real young, or real?
Yeah, she's a tiny baby, a premature baby, but at 9 ounces, this is a stage at which many abortions take place, and if you take a look at this, this is and some of these measures that are going into the legislatures, that the heartbeat law.
The heartbeat laws, I know, And the thing about it is, Doug, we have been consistent, and the scriptural thing, Doug, is consistent, that I knew you, formed you in your mother's womb. I knew you, God is the one who puts this thing together, This is not to say, we know in a world that we live in, Doug, we've talked about this many, many times, which has been broken through the fall, that there aren't things that happen. Like there are babies that are stillborn, Doug. There are things that happen. But that's not to say you use an excuse to kill what God has put it. I mean, life is a very precious commodity. The Founding Fathers said it very well. First right they mentioned, we have the right to life.
Right, yeah, exactly.
As opposed to liberty and happiness. Liberty and happiness are the second two, and that's right. But it's not happiness which is hedonistic, based on selfishness. It's based on the fact that life is the prerequisite for the other things to happen. For liberty to happen, for happiness to happen, you have to be alive. And that's that. And the original founders recognized the biblical principle. So anyway, the idea that poor design, and this is just one of many arguments that are used for poor design, right? I mean, this is one of the most popular ones I've heard for many years, or one of the more. It's a little esoteric to somebody if you're not familiar with it, but it's just that sometimes they don't tell you specifics like this. They'll do this. Well, there are things that they're in the body or in animals that are inefficient or badly designed. Right. Most people couldn't tell you what they are. We're telling you one of the ones they actually use.
Now let's compare it with human-designed devices, like the computer or something like this. There is a difference there, is that they don't need to function until their development is complete. So you can have all these dead parts and put them together, and finally you have it all assembled, and then you turn it on and attach it to the power source, and it works. But in life, you start out with a single cell that's fertilized, and it divides and it divides, and each different step of the cycle needs to function completely, 100%, in order for it to be viable and in life. And so this is a reason why this particular nerve is set up this way, is that it's part of the development cycle of of the
That's
fetus.
what that embryologist was
That's what he's
saying.
basically
Yeah.
saying.
Yep.
And yes, it's if you really want to interpret that as a design of evolution or a feature of evolution, that's you can go ahead and do that, but you're really foolish to make that assertion. And if one asserts that this recurrent laryngeal nerve is a poor design, he assumes that you can come up with a better design. And that claim cannot be asserted unless you have an alternative embryonic design from fertilizing ovum to fetus that works throughout the cycle
the entire process, yeah.
That it's going to be a better design. And lacking that claim, you really have all you have is an evolution of the gaps argument.
Yep. And what do you mean? What are you talking about? Yeah, because they say we have God of the gaps.
Out of the gaps, yes.
Yeah, in other words, you can't explain something. Evolution just randomly picked this one or whatever, you know?
Yeah, I also like to point out these, pick out of the air these little explanations that they come up with, like convergent evolution. You have...
that's the biggest boondoggle I've ever heard.
Yeah, if you... I like the aloe and the century plant. The aloe is in Africa and the century plant is in America.
Right.
And there are two different types of plants that have the feature of rosettes of leaves that capture water.
Yeah.
And those two different things are different, but they're molecularly or genetically different from each other.
Right.
But if you look at them, they're pretty much almost the same in terms of how they function.
Interesting. I didn't know about my favorite one, Doug, we've talked about many times in the past, the different kinds of wings for different kinds of creatures.
Right.
Convergent evolution from the insect wing, like the dragonfly and butterfly, to the bat wing, to the reptile wing of the extinct pteranodons and pterodactyls, to the bird wings. And they're all these abilities to fly.
Right.
But they're genetically how they're created. There's no relationship whatsoever. So they have to make. They call it convergent evolution. Just it's circumstances. It picked. Evolution just picked it over time. These four different things to make them look virtually identical, yet based on entirely genetically different processes to get there.
Exactly, and it's interesting that you have. If you take the wide variety of insects. The wide variety of insect wings that are available.
Exactly, I didn't even go there.
Yeah, and so if you take a look at the beetles' wings, which they have a little bit of a covering.
Yep.
They have the bumblebees' wings, the wings of the fly, the wings of the dragonfly, wings of a butterfly. And then you talk about the metamorphosis of the butterfly.
I don't know if you're going to get to that, especially the monarch is just entirely fascinating to me. Doug, it's a picture of the resurrection, what's going to happen to us. We are going to be, this body's going to be thrown off and we're going to get a new body. In essence, that's what happens to the butterfly. It goes into this chrysalis.
Right.
It dissolves into this green jelly. So if you open up a chrysalis in the middle of its cycle, you're going to get a green jelly from the cat. There was a fully functioning caterpillar.
Right.
It goes into this chrysalis, comes out, it's this beautiful monarch butterfly. That's our resurrection body, Doug.
Right.
That to me is a neat. It's almost like the Lord gave a type, if you will, to show how different, how magnificent it's going to be. Because the caterpillar is voracious, selfish, chews up the milkweed, destroys the plants if it needs to. But once it comes out, the butterfly virtually doesn't even eat.
Right.
But it's a beautiful thing, and everyone loves butterfly gardens. Right. Well, maybe there's somebody out there that doesn't like them, but almost everybody I know, and I love walking through them. You just feel peaceful. Yet it's a bug. Most people hate bugs, but they love butterflies. It's a different thing.
And butterflies, their wings have many of them have sort of like a refraction type of things that gives it the color. And there was one bug somebody was studying that gave him an idea that he was they were it was a firefly, and the firefly also has this little bulb of stuff that lights up, and they were looking at this and they said, why is this cold light so bright?
Right.
And it turns out that there's like scales on this part of the abdomen of the lightning bug that go over each other, and they create this diffraction grating that increases the light tremendously. So I said, I'm going to try this on our LED lights. And it turns out that if you put this diffraction grating on the LED lights, the amount of light that it turns out, increases.
Well, how many examples we've talked about over the years, from Velcro to, you name it, that they've actually copied from the natural world. So, and we consider ourselves designers. We are designers, and yet we have to borrow, really steal from the quote evolutionary. No, there's a designer out there. Doug, I'll still never forget, Dawkins spent an hour and a half trying to tell me why an airplane wing was designed and a bird's wing was an accident. Yeah. And I said, boy, that to me right there lost me. That just a bird wing is so infinitely more complicated than any kind of an airplane wing. But design. I think design is one of the strongest arguments for the creation point. Intelligent design is the strongest argument for that. So you want to give a little plug for?
Yeah, I'm going to plug Jerry's book again. Poor Design: An Invalid Argument Against Intelligent Design. Here are some of the things that he talks about. He talks about the muscular skeletal system, the spinal column, knees and joints. Of course, that's the complaint I heard in a debate, that I got a bad back, so evolution must be true. Okay, the design of the reproductive system. Now, I was going to do a show on that, and I said, well, this really gets into some details I don't want to really talk about. So, and then the design of the nervous system, the upper respiratory system, and of course he talked about the sinuses and the pharynx and then we talked about the eye last time.
Which gave Darwin conniption fits,
And so the question is, are some organisms poorly designed? That's in the appendix. And so this argument for poor design, this is a valuable book. I would recommend that you take a look at it and see what he has to say about it.
The argument for poor design is a poor argument.
I would say so. We'll see you next time on Revolution Against Evolution.